came here by chance.
Did you come here on your own?
Yes.
What were you doing before this happened? What was your job?
As a teacher.
A teacher? What age kids were you teaching?
I taught adults.
Did you talk about the possibility of this happening much with them?
Sometimes, yes.
In the period 1957 to 58, the Soviet Union experienced a major nuclear accident at its nuclear weapons production installation near Chelyabinsk. A large area remains devastated to this day. Thousands of people were seriously injured, many died. Soviet nuclear tests at Novaya Zemlya have endangered the people and the fragile life support system of the Arctic region. It is estimated that the Lapps perhaps have more nuclear material in their bodies than any other peoples in the world, with the possible exception of those living in the Marshall Islands of Eniwetok, Rongelap, Uterik, those living near Chernobyl in the Ukraine, those living in the desert towns of Nevada and Utah near the US test site, those living in the Polynesian islands to the east and west of Mururoa, those living near the British test sites in Australia, those living near the main Soviet test site of Semipalatinsk in Kazakhstan, those living near the Paris.
It comes down to not believing that letters are worth writing, for example. If everybody who felt as strongly as they say they do actually wrote letters, at least they would have some kind of evidence that enormous numbers of people didn't accept their policies or what they were saying. But I think it takes a considerable act of faith to actually decide that one letter is worth writing. It's yours and your neighbours and your neighbours' neighbours.
The Prime Minister stated to the House this morning that the present widespread arrests by police and special units of the armed forces will cease as soon as, in her words, these selfish and extremist elements have understood where their true loyalties lie. Mrs. Thatcher stressed the need for national unity and appealed to the spirit of the Falklands.
We should have just gone out in the streets more. There should have been more of us in the streets. I don't know about writing letters, because when you write a letter, you don't get anything back. You don't get a feeling. But when you stand in the street with people who believe in the same thing as you, that feels really good.
And how many were on the streets for the march and were written off?
I know.
The whole thing made trivial?
But if enough of us had been there, then perhaps it couldn't have been made trivial. It was amazing that they trivialised that many in number. We stood on the top of Parliament House steps and looked down Burke Street. And that was just an amazing sight, just filled with people, but it still wasn't enough, and there still should have been more of us out there. And I don't know, you have to go on fighting.
You know, and I think you and I have both covered a great number of peace demonstrations in Europe and in North America. And I'm wondering, what's your view? Do you think that there has been much impact by the peace movement in Europe and North America on these talks? Do you think there will be much impact on the talks when the negotiators are sitting there at the table?
There's no question that there was an enormous impact on the previous round of talks. It was pretty clear that the Soviets were banking on enormous pressure put on Western governments by Western peace movements to in effect, stop the deployment of cruise and Pershing missiles. The Soviets, in effect, stalled and then broke off negotiations, hoping that the peace movement would have that effect. The peace movements didn't have that effect. The missiles are now in place in Western Europe, and I think that what we'll be seeing now in the round of negotiations that just opened is much less of an impact by Western peace movements simply because of that failure 18 months ago.
I think it's one of the things that our little campaign has succeeded in doing is in making more information available. Throughout the course of the last 5 years, the very existence of our group here has prompted more and more and more, very gradually, but quite definitely, we have forced more and more information from the Ministry of Defence as regards what is actually proposed there. And again, by our very existence, we have prompted the issue to be raised within the media and to be discussed in the media, and prompted reactions from people as regards that, the whole issue. Now, the media are crucial to it, but like you say, Peter, it's a matter of, and as Mavis has just said, by and large, it is very much a matter of the media tending to use you. How exactly you confront that is a huge question. One of the best ways, to my mind, that it could be done is through, at the very least, making media studies a more significant element of use of in the education system, in the school system. It plays such a major role in the formulation of people's ideas and the information they get about the world, etc., etc. People tend to look on it like, people tend to relatively passively accept what comes out of the box, for example, or the press. Children are not prepared by our education system to be able to assess the processes that information goes through before it emerges in their living rooms or on the front pages of their papers. We don't provide them with any kind of skills or any kind of insight into how it works.
Who gets killed in El Salvador? Well, it could be as simple as being a teacher, a university professor, a nurse, a Catholic lay worker who works with refugees.
You mean just for doing your job? Just for doing your job, you can be targeted?
That's right. You don't have to be a political person. You don't have to have said, I side with this side or with that side. Just for being who you are, for being perhaps your father's son, or being somebody's nephew, that is enough to get you killed.
Briefly, Sheila, did you find you had any trouble maintaining that tradition of journalistic objectivity that we're all supposed to have?
Well, it's difficult. When we were in El Salvador and Guatemala in particular, we were talking with people who were desperately trying to leave their country, who many of them wanted to come to Canada, many of them wanted information about coming to Canada. I had, on 2 different occasions, I had people come up to me who knew I was a Canadian journalist who desperately wanted me to help them. All I could do was give them an address that they could go. I could do no more than that. I couldn't smuggle them out of the country. For a journalist, for any journalist, it's an impossibility.
And that's Sunday Report for this week. For CBC News, I'm Michael McIver. Good evening.
Is it that the media themselves have become the influential people?
Why do you think newspapers like the Globe and Mail have the bias that you feel they do?
Well, because they're, well, the Globe and Mail, for example, all Canadian newspapers, the ones that are read by the general public, are obviously within the bounds of American spheres of influence. And they have to, well, some of them are owned in part, I guess, by Americans. They have to say the party line, if you will. That's basically it.
What happens if they don't, do you think?
I don't think anything will happen. That's why I think it's kind of a superstitious fear they have. I don't know what could possibly happen to them. I don't know. I imagine the hierarchy in the newspapers, the ownership, have friends, associates in the United States, and they'll be reprimanded or criticized if they come out against it. Actually, I don't really believe that they're free-thinking people anyway. I think they enjoy being dominated by American imperialism. They need something to enslave them.
Do you think actions like this are useful?
Demonstrations?
Yeah.
No, I don't. As a matter of fact, I just came here today because my friend invited me and I feel strongly about it. But unfortunately, I think that demonstrations, the size of them and the effectiveness have died down from the 60s, for example. They had, big rallies. You see all those films. I wasn't alive then, but I've seen the films. And right now they're kind of disorganized and fragmented, and they're very small. And they're pushed away. What's the word? They're not looked upon with favor, by general public. I don't think Ronald Reagan or Brian Mulroney will give it a second thought. Perhaps within these own organizations it serves as a good exercise or something like that. But I don't really see how they've come along very far.
What kinds of actions do you think do produce change? In your own life, what are you trying to do?
Education, I think, is the only way to enlighten the masses. I don't think terrorism or anything like that, anarchism, I'm opposed to that. It just creates more strife and conflict, makes the right wing more adamant towards their goals. I think to remove the veil of ignorance from the world is the most direct way, at least, to achieving enlightenment.
Do you think the media conspires to confuse people?
No, I don't think they conspire to confuse people. I think they have the direct reins to confuse people, and they don't have to go to any extra lengths.
Mr. George Heisland, editor of the Sunday Times, joined The Sun, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, and other leading newspapers in denying that the media is biased in its reporting. Said Mr. Heisland, objectivity and a balanced view remain the criteria by which we present information to the British public. At the same time, added Mr. Heisland, in times of national crisis, the British media does have a broader responsibility for the overall good of the nation. When challenged by Mr. Atkinson of the TUC as to why the media had placed a blanket of silence in recent years over the whole issue of home defence and emergency powers legislation, Mr. Heisland stated that the British press had always investigated issues of concern and interest to the British public. If there had been little coverage of this particular area, said Mr. Heisland, then that was because there had been little interest in the subject expressed by the public.
Between 1977 to 1979, Britain sold arms to over 40 countries listed by Amnesty International as having violated human rights. Britain is the world's second largest exporter of police and paramilitary equipment, such as handcuffs, chemical grenades and riot guns, rubber bullets, surveillance devices, and police computers. In 1982, the British Army offered electric shock batons to representatives of the junta in Chile. In 1982, Britain sold 13 Aerospace Hawk aircraft to Indonesia, weapons suited for the Indonesian repression of East Timor, where it is estimated that 1/3 of the population has been killed since 1975.
At Buckingham Palace, a spokesman for the Prince of Wales said that due to the current international crisis, the Prince and Princess of Wales have had to cancel their forthcoming trip to Australia and New Zealand. Prince William is understood to have expressed keen disappointment at not being able to renew his acquaintanceship with a baby koala bear he met at Government House, Sydney, on the last successful royal tour 2 years ago. And now, international show jumping.
Veuillez rester debout après pour les hymnes nationaux et le toast à la Reine du Canada. Please remain standing afterwards for the national anthems and a toast to the Queen. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
The Secret Service. Secret Service.
You're not even giving peace a chance, Mr. Mulroney. And that's what you promised to do.
And you figure Mulroney is just going along buying wholesale Reagan's line of goods for the defense of North America.
I think that Mulroney is being scared when he doesn't need to be scared. I think Mulroney should trust the Canadian people to decide with him that we can be independent, that we can have our own peace policy and not simply swallow Reagan fantasies wholeheartedly. And it's Mulroney that should be ashamed of himself today.
Why do you think it is that the Canadians are talking more about Reagan than Mulroney?
The easy answer is that we're the victims of the North American U.S. culture, and so we don't even know who governs us. The more difficult answer is that, in fact, it's largely true. We are a client state, and you know, the biggest banana republic in the world. And it's going to take quite a bit of doing by all of us to change that. It's good, you know, but Mulroney should give us the leadership to do that. Mulroney should help us find our own way, find a way that will make the whole world a safer place. It's a terribly frightened and dangerous place now. Frightened people are dangerous, you know, and we're frightening ourselves, and we're frightening the rest of the world.
Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, the Queen. Notwithstanding your enthusiastic applause, the President and I wish to announce that we won't be singing any more songs. Please be seated. Monsieur le Président, Madame Reagan, chers amis, en nous répartissant l'Amérique du Nord, l'histoire...
In sharing North America between our two countries, history has sealed a pact of friendship between us. The laws of nature and economics, our mutual security, and the moral heritage of our peoples predestine us to dialogue and solidarity. The coming together of our interests has woven between us countless strands of economic, scientific, and cultural exchange. Your presence looms so large in our national life that it sometimes raises legitimate concerns about the preservation of our identity.
Well, you don't have to be in Washington to lobby. Mr. Reagan has spent much of the last 2 days in Canada, but he has spent some of that time on the phone with members of Congress lobbying for the MX. And even though the setting was Canada, the president seemed to have the Soviets more on his mind. Here's ABC's Sam Donaldson.
It was here in Canada, where President Reagan and Prime Minister Mulroney held a highly successful summit, that the president, after a week of conciliatory rhetoric in the wake of the Soviet leadership change, chose to renew charges about Soviet cheating in arms control.
The Soviet Union signed the Yalta Accord, pledging free elections, then proceeded to dominate Eastern Europe. They signed the Geneva Convention, banning use of chemical weapons, SALT II, limiting development of new weapons, and the ABM Treaty, but are now violating all three.
The president did say the United States is ready to work with the Soviet Union on arms control at Geneva. But much of today's emphasis was on defense.
Tara, did you, before this afternoon, did you know that twice as many black children die in this country after they're born as white children?
No, I didn't know that.
Did you know that twice as many black mothers die while they're giving birth to babies as white mothers?
No. I knew that a lot of people died while giving birth, but I didn't know how many people exactly.
Ellen, what do you feel when you look at these figures, these charts on the table?
In regard to the infant mortality, I think that's a shame that the black people have such a high average of infant deaths. I don't know why, except maybe there are lower living conditions and the mothers aren't nourished right or something, and they probably don't have the doctor's care before birth. And I think that's one of the blights on our nation that we have. The blacks are, more of them are unemployed, especially the young people. They don't have much of a chance. They drop out of school probably before they're educated enough. And they need to, if they had enough money or if they had good enough positions to afford more education, they'd recover, you know.
But they don't have the money.
No, they don't. They aren't able to go to college as much as the white children, I know that. And so they just have to struggle along, and that's one of the shames on our nation.
Ellen, in the last year or so, and in these months of the election campaign here in America, how much have you heard? How much have you heard politicians or the public ever discussing the direct connection between the arms race, the nuclear arms race, the conventional weapons arms race, the amount of money being spent on nuclear weapons, and unemployment, and malnutrition and poverty in the United States, even, let us say, the death of these young black babies? How many times do you hear the direct connection made between the arms race and these problems?
No, I haven't heard any discussion of direct connection at all, because
we have
sometimes the articles are on one subject or the other, but not in direct connection.
I think there's a connection. I think I've heard it made, but not often enough or to enough people. And I've heard it made particularly by the Mondale Ferrar campaign, and I've heard it made by other people, but I've never, it's not often enough as to sort of sink in. I think maybe we might hear more of it tomorrow night on the debate about foreign affairs and that, but I don't know. I don't know if they really do pay enough attention to it, because they have to cut down. The way they do their politics and their speaking is so cut up and cut down that I don't know how, they don't seem to go into these things because they have to get to the point of what they want people to pick up on, and so they cut it off sometimes. And that's where it comes in again, where the human suffering that goes on is just ignored because we have this quick-cut society where we just don't want to take the time to listen. It's really not, I say I've heard it, but then I'm tuned into it, and I'm listening for that. So other people, I don't really think that it is covered at all. Like I said, it's definitely not covered in depth, and so it's not covered because it's probably something that I picked up on because I have been aware of it myself, but I don't think that it is really in the media. It's not in the, it's not in the daily paper. It's not in the news at night. It's something that is kind of shoveled down and ignored because people don't want you to hear it. They don't want you to hear what's going on in terms of suffering here in America because they just want to get into office right now and they don't want to, talk about that. So,
in North America and across the North Atlantic, we are proud to stand watch with you, and together we shall keep our people free, secure, and at peace. We will issue a declaration on international security and sign a memorandum on the modernization of our North American air defense system. More powerful in our economies, more powerful in our friendship, the United States and Canada can meet together the challenge of defending freedom and leaving a safer world for those who will follow. For more than 35 years, we and our European friends have joined together in history's most successful alliance, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The world will not forget that Canada was in the forefront of the nations that formed and armed NATO. Upgrading NATO's conventional forces is essential to deterrence. The greater our ability to resist Soviet aggression with conventional forces, the less likely such aggression will ever occur. NATO is engaged in a rebuilding program, and today I want to thank publicly Prime Minister Mulroney and the Canadian people for your commitment to enhance your contribution to NATO's conventional forces and our overall defenses. Your deficit as a percentage of gross national product is bigger than ours, but you understand that protecting freedom is government's primary responsibility, and we salute Canadian wisdom and Canadian courage.
Escalating military expenditure in the United States has resulted in high interest rates, an overvalued dollar, and an expanded budget deficit, to the point where the United States, as debtor nation, may owe the rest of the world as much as $500 billion by the early 1990s.
It was getting towards the end of the year, and the base had well over $1 million that they had to spend. It was either spend it or lose it. And our division was given a considerable amount of money to spend before the end of the year. We had like a month and a half to spend it in. And the commanding officer wanted, as a portion of it, he wanted about $40,000 worth of football gear, of semi-pro football gear. And I refused to sign the requisitions ordering this equipment. And in doing so, that meant that my supervisor then had to sign the requisitions. But we had no way to use the equipment. There was no football field, there was no locker room, there was no team to play against or bus to transport the team with. You know, the whole expenditure was just a waste. The equipment was received and was put in storage for a couple of years before it was finally sent to another base, but that was part of a total amount of just under $500,000 that I took to a representative's office. I made an appointment to go in and see his assistant and arrived to a locked door and a darkened office. The next day I made another appointment and confirmed it for the following day, and I arrived early and stayed late and received the same welcoming to a locked door and no lights on. From there I went to a retired state representative and was referred to an FBI agent to try and disclose this, and after many put-offs, I was finally told that it was management's discretion as to spend money the way that they saw fit. And it really irritated me because, like I asked the agent, when I was in the Air Force, there was a military individual thrown out of the service for buying civilian cigarettes, and here we're looking at almost $500,000 worth of wasted government money, and nothing's being done about it. Well, something was done about it. I began to be relocated. My pay didn't take any cut, but my level of responsibility was reduced.
Well, not together. They talk about him separately, but they've never really talked about him together.
They've never said to you, look, there may be a connection, or there is a connection between these two things?
No, they haven't.
It's kind of a sad thing that they're not connecting these things together, but it just seems like, if they did, then it's like Tricia said, people would not re-elect them to office. The major thing that they want is to build up the arms, and they lead you to believe that by increasing this, then it will lead to more prosperity. And they don't mention the fact that in order to spend more money on the arms, then you have to spend less money on other things that are more needed.
Yo como mexicana que soy acá de este país, de México, les pido les doy una opinión a todos los presidentes y al presidente de Estados Unidos y al presidente, a los rusos.
This is Elena Ortega. We filmed with her and her family in Mexico a few days ago. Elena is here in the courtyard of her home in the state of Morelos, just below Mexico City. And with her neighbors, she is recording for us a message. She's speaking directly to the President of the United States and she and her neighbors, to the leaders of the world arms race, appealing for a reallocation of the world's resources, that money not be spent on arms, but on food. They are saying that they want to live in peace and not to have war. These people are hungry, and they say that they want food.
Y eso no está bien, entonces mejor que ayuden al pobre, a los enfermos que no hayan que hacer, se mueren de hambre, y ellos allá haciendo armas en cosas, que invirtiendo el dinero en cosas que no sirven. Mejor paz y no guerra.
They are forced to steal. They are hungry. They have to support their children. It's not that they are lazy. We don't see any progress. We don't have enough money to buy the essentials.
In the background, from a nearby town, we can hear the sound of a government political rally for the ruling PRI party, the party of the President of Mexico. Officials with sashes, music to entertain the people, speeches into microphones, gesticulations, and promises. Many promises.
Pues en esa forma están cambiándolo todo, en que, como le digo yo, pues yo no veo cómo en esas de tanto eso que dicen, como dice usted, de la nuclear, quién sabe cómo le.
These things you are telling us about nuclear weapons. This is for their benefit, not for ours. We are just being destroyed more and more.
No es que nos estén ayudando.
We mustn't let money serve as a blinder over our eyes. Let us just look at this picture. Let it warn us, make us aware. Beware. If someone is working for the CEP, he won't object to this thing. We can no longer act in this way. We are now aware of the atomic danger. The right thing for us to do is to seek every way conceivable of ridding our country of this testing at Mururoa. An idea was expressed earlier. Why have these tests been carried out at Mururoa? And when I reflect on this idea, it seems right. Why on Mururoa? Why not in their own country? That's what the French woman was asking. I say, remove that thing and take it over there. Eliminate it. It is worthless. Because if this object remains here permanently, there will no longer be any food supply. The present Polynesian food supply, it's there, in the sea. If this atomic thing remains here with us for a long time, there will be no food there any longer, for it will no longer be edible. There are a number of places where the fish are no longer edible. They are poisonous. What will we do tomorrow? That is our food store. That is the only thing of value we have to leave to our children in times to come. For that reason, it is up to the Polynesian people to observe carefully and to be aware and to express their opinions. We don't want that thing here anymore. That's quite true. What also worries me is my children. When grown up, they may ask me, "Dad, you allowed all their atomic things to stay in our country. What was your reason for raising no objections?" Therefore, today, I am going to object to the French government's testing in our country. One thing that bewilders me is our country's political representatives. Haven't they yet seen these pictures? Do they have any children, I wonder?
Alt mulig som fint.
Everything that is nice.
Det kanskje en gang så vil jeg kanskje se ut sånn over hele verden hvis
Sometime in the future,
alle sammen vil ha.
maybe the whole world will look like this if everybody is doing their share.
Så du har syntes det ser ut som vi kan klare det?
So you believe that we could manage to improve the bad things?
Ja. Det er vanskelig å svare på det.
Well, it's difficult to give an answer.
Ikke så mye enda som har viktig å bedre selv rasesorteringen.
So far, we have not achieved very much.
Bare håpe at det vil
Racism. There is much of that left. But one can only hope that it will diminish in the future.
Føler du deg noen gang sint over at vi har laget en sånn verden?
Do you ever get angry that we have created such a society where we can have racism?
Ser på TV-en og
Yes.
sånn at det
Sometimes when I see on the TV how people are discriminated against, I get angry at those who made it like that.
fått det til som de
The Europeans who began slavery.
med slavedrivere.
En veces piensa uno que está difícil ya porque ya está muy avanzada toda la carestía, ya tiene tiempo esto pues que viene la carestía y digo que ya tal vez quién sabe si se pueda, ¿verdad? Porque pues,
With all this inflation, the prices keep rising. We can't face this anymore. Who is going to pay attention to the peasants? It's the government. It's the government who has to do something about this.
A ver, uno de campesino, ¿qué le hace uno? No puede uno menos, es que el gobierno es el que manda. Y seguro así quiere que siga, pues va.
No byi maka swilo swa ku hini vavasati a va hi famba ko ka hosi ya jima.
This I still remember, that we as women had to go and do forced work in the fields. There was always someone walking around the village, checking and reporting back which of the families worked, and which never did anything for the chief.
Ja ku kontiwa miti hinkwayo leyi mi nga ka mi nga swi kotanga ku va mi famba mi ya jima ka hosi. Ja vanhu lavayani va ta kuma ku va famba va ya thethisiwa lahaya. Ja loko a swi jula podi ku a tsimbiwa nkatako hi mapindzi loko na wena wansati u nga swi kotanga ku famba u ya tlhutlha leswaku wena we ngo mutsimba nkatako leswaku a nga boya ta tlhutlha ke. Ja loko nkatako lahaya o singita a ku thetheni ka kona lahaya a famba na n'wini leswaku ya yingiseta loko o bekanyana zwito swi muhlula hi mhaka ku a pfa a ni swi byalanganya swimbeni kumbe swa muti kumbe pfoka hi nge kona pronto nuna luya ta tsimbiwa hi mapindzi.
It would all then depend on how the chief took it, and he could easily decide that you as a woman be tried. And if she couldn't explain why she didn't do whatever job she was expected to do, she would be beaten up. And you could expect a harassment anytime, especially on Sundays. And all this was as a result of the way the Portuguese colonialists regarded women.
What is happening in a family where there is no male child and all of the children are females?
Ce qu'on fait, on répudie cette femme-là qui n'a que des filles.
The woman who has only girls is repudiated, and another wife is tried. If the latter also has girls, another wife takes her place, and so on. It never ends. Isn't there a tradition that if a boy is born, the yuyu should be chanted as a sign of joy, but not in the case of a girl? Yes, that's very true. A baby boy is welcomed with much joy. There's a lot of merrymaking. The meals are different. Even the woman who's just given birth is quite well treated. She's brought nice food. But if the baby is a girl, it's tears and sadness. When the women come to welcome the baby, they say to the mother, "Thank God she's not disabled," and they carry on. "Sure, this time it's a girl, but never mind, you'll have sons later. Don't worry, it will come." And the mother cries her heart out.
Moi, je suis née comme ça.
I was born like that.